Imagine an economic crisis. It's not that difficult. We've all seen them in our lifetimes. The world's biggest economies are based on a fiat economic system. In other words, they aren't backed by gold. So, money is just created by governments out of thin air. Surely, nothing could go wrong with that. So, what happens when the entire fiat economy collapses? Well, that's where Dystopia 23 begins. It all started with a financial collapse bigger than any seen before it. The crisis was so severe that it knocked out governments. Some governmental systems even collapsed completely, leaving anarchy in their wake. But even the larger ones that did survive were hobbled, no longer able to provide the basic necessities of life. Clean water, electricity, road maintenance, schools, hospitals, the fire service, and even the police force. In a very short time, civilization was driven from excess into poverty. Overnight, society changed forever. In many cases, it was decades before even basic functions were revived. In some countries, these functions would never return. Without the basic necessities, society reverted to a primitive state. Crime went through the roof. Those who had were targeted by those who didn't. As time went by, neighborhoods turned into sprawls and run-down tenements. These areas were full of crime. Gangs and crime syndicates moved in to take control. Because most governments could no longer afford a comprehensive police force, walls were erected to keep the sprawlers from the civilized population. In other words, the rich were provided for, and the poor were left to fend for themselves. These sprawling areas that were once vibrant neighborhoods were labeled as free zones. They were free from government interference and assistance. Over time, most governments returned to a healthy economic position. But this did not mean that things changed for the inhabitants of those countries. The generous and sympathetic ideals that had inhabited the world in the 20th and 21st centuries were replaced with a harsh, selfish view of the world. Social welfare, equity, and a goal to provide for all in society were replaced with the survival of the fittest, dog-eat-dog attitude. The walls had been erected, and those in charge were determined to keep the riffraff on the other side. Policing was for the civilized and the wealthy. The poor would have to settle for whatever protection they could scratch together. The same could be said for healthcare, sustenance, and justice. To accompany the harsh new attitude came a rigorous set of new laws. The justice system became increasingly punitive, and in an Orwellian twist, governments decided to set up a revolutionary monitoring system to keep an eye on its citizens. Besides the thousands of surveillance cameras and drones throughout the cities, the Nexus was used to monitor and track citizens through the use of electronic pics. The world of the 23rd century is an overwhelming place. Citizens are blasted with digital advertising, in an environment with crushing poverty, crime, and technology that is hard to keep up with. Living in this age is not for the faint-hearted. Most people end up on the junk heap at a young age, and only those with a will to survive, a sharp skill set, and raw natural talent can expect to prosper in this environment. Characters in the game find themselves thrust into this milieu of poverty and crime. They have decided to back themselves in the most dangerous profession in history. Razor walkers can be motivated by many things. Some of them seek justice against the governments and megacorporations that have oppressed their families and communities. Some of them fight for a cause, the environment, justice, or some other ideology. And many of them are driven by the almighty dollar to climb their way out of the gutter and make a better life for themselves and their loved ones. But the way of the razor walker is no easy path. The system itself is the enemy. The monoliths of government and megacorp collaborate to keep the people down and suppress anyone who would dare to upset the status quo.